Table here. Today I want to go over what these hit icons mean over here on the right hand side of the screen every time you hit an enemy ship with the shell. Will give you an idea of how to read these and what the game's trying to tell you. So this is particularly important when we're firing AP at the enemy. If we can get the AP to work as intended, then we want to be using that. If it's getting less than optimal results or it's not doing any damage, then we need to switch to the HE or SAP depending on what we're using. So this left hand icon here, this is the one that you want to have happen, right? It means it's a penetration with an internal explosion. These hits do a third of the AP shell's maximum damage. Unless there's a citadel ribbon, then they do the max listed AP damage. Okay, so citadel, we're not going to go too deep into it, but it's kind of in the middle of the ship under the waterline typically. That's where the maximum damage is. Regular penetrations means the shell is penetrating inside the ship successfully and it's blowing up in there, not in the citadel compartment. Okay, so generally those are going to be the regular shots that you want to have happen. If you can get a citadel, great. Then you'd prefer a citadel, obviously. But that's this one right here. This is what we want to be seeing. Okay. Next up, over penetration. This means that the shell is hitting a piece of the ship and it's not encountering enough armor before it passes through. Right. Every shell that the AP shells have a fuse, and they need to hit a certain amount of armor before the fuse is armed. Then when they do that, then the shell will explode with some sort of delay after that. So I think you can get over pens with the shell traveling too fast, and then before it actually detonates, it'll go through the other side. That's possible as well, but typically it's just that you're not getting enough armor. So if I'm in a heavily armored or big gun caliber battleship, for instance, I shoot a cruiser with no armor. Well, those shells are never going to arm. They go right through it. Same with destroyers. Battleships will always get over pens on destroyers. Over pens do 1/10 of the damage of the max listed for AP, which is still fine, especially for hitting destroyers. Higher tiers, that's typically about 1,000 per hit, and destroyers got between 10 and 20,000 HP typically. So that's still a good chunk of their HP, especially if you're hitting with multiple shells. But that's basically what this one's doing. It's less optimal than this, obviously, except for shooting against destroyers, then it's the expected result. If we are getting a lot of those, we would want to maybe aim for a more heavily armored piece of the ship. Let's say I'm hitting this thing in the nose here, and this has no armor here, but maybe the middle has a lot of armor. We could adjust the aim accordingly. Middle, this is a shatter on the outside of the ship. Basically, the armor that we're hitting is too thick for the shell to penetrate. Okay, so penetration drops off the further you are from the launch point, the further the target is, rather. So if a battleship's 15 kilometers away and I hit it, that may be a shatter. And if you could teleport the same battleship, same angle to 5 or 10 kilometers away, hit the same exact spot, that may transform into a regular penetration at that point in time. So that's typically what's going on with this, or the gun caliber is just too small for the armor value that it's encountering no matter what the distance. That's the other possibility. So when we're putting on perks that improve AP penetration, typically what we're doing, we're trying to cancel this, we're trying to convert this into this, and how we're doing that is by keeping the penetration stronger at distance, right? Those perks are not going to allow your guns to magically all of a sudden penetrate the next level of armor that it previously couldn't do, but what it will do is allow you to continue to hit successful penetration at further distance, typically. Okay, so this is basically your shells are not penetrating the armor, not doing any damage in that instance. This one is a newer addition. I think it came out maybe 3, 4, or 5 months ago. And basically what's happening here is it's entering one piece of armor and then encountering another piece of armor and shattering there. So there are some layered armor schemes in some ships, typically battleships. French cruisers have some spaced armor as well. But that's basically what that is. That's a rare one, but it is basically another form of shatter. It's just telling you that you are hitting through one piece of armor, but not detonating inside of the ship sufficiently. And then the last one has to do with armor angling. This, I call it a skip. Ricochet, I believe, is the technical term. But basically, if a ship is broadside, there's no chance to ricochet, right? Okay, and then as it gets into about a 45-degree angle, kind of like what this looks like, Now we're into a chance to ricochet. And then when it gets really steeply at about 60, much more, I don't know what the thing is, but 10 degrees, I think the game calls it 10, 15 degrees, but much more pointed directly at or away from you, then we're in the auto bounce territory unless the gun caliber is so large that it overmatches that particular piece of armor. A little bit more complicated than I want to get into in this bull bite, but basically this means you're hitting a thick piece of armor that's angled at you sufficiently and you're skipping off the side of the ship and it's not doing any damage. So if I'm shooting at this thing, rather than hitting the hull, which is going to result in a lot of these, I'm going to want to try and hit the superstructure, which is more lightly armored. And well, this is a Megami, so we could still punch through this, but assume this was a battleship. We'd rather hit in the superstructure, lighter armor. Maybe we would be overmatching that armor instead of skipping off of it. Or if that's not working, then you'd want to switch to HE again. So this is penetration. This is the one you want. This is overpen. Decent, but not great. This is a shatter that's bad. This is a shatter that's bad. And this is a skip that's bad. But you need to be able to read these results and interpret them properly. So hopefully that helps and hopefully you enjoyed it. And we'll see y'all later. Peace.